It's the evening of Tuesday, the 28th of June 2005, almost 20 years ago. Yunus Asmall and his wife Sara, together with their little daughter Mishka, 9 years of age, were at home watching Wimbledon. The Asmalls were well-known people in KwaZulu-Natal. In the clothing industry, they ran a chain of stores throughout KwaZulu-Natal called Asmalls. They had opened up a shop in Cape Town, and their daughter, Rochelle, the eldest daughter, was running that shop. And Yunus had got a flat that she was staying in at that stage. She'd been going out with a boyfriend, Faisal, who had moved in with her. So Rochelle wasn't with them. So Yunus, Sara, and Mishka, watching Wimbledon, sitting there unexpectedly, and the next thing, the phone rings. Mishka jumps up, picks up the phone that was hanging from the wall, and turns around and says, "Dad, there's a man on the line and it's urgent." Yunus immediately knew something was wrong. That was when he learned that their daughter Rochelle had passed away. Inexplicably. Was it suicide or was it murder? That set in motion the tragic events that followed for the 20 years that followed the incident. In his book, Justice Delayed, Gideon Skelterma wrote about the battle of the Asmall family in getting justice for their daughter Rochelle. It is a story about the first successful private prosecution for murder ever concluded in the world. Now, I say this because I've done my research, and as far as I can gather, it is the first successful private prosecution for murder in the world. But if I'm not correct, please comment in the section below, because we'd like to know if there's any other private prosecutions for murder that had been successfully concluded. But this story is a story about gender-based violence against women. Sara Asmall is the voice of so many women who've been victim to gender-based violence. She stood up and fought for 20 years for justice for her daughter. Tonight we're interviewing Yunus, the father, will tell us the story from his perspective, and that's going to be followed up by a next video that we'll shortly be bringing out with Gideon, telling us about more detail about the actual private prosecution and the trial that ensued. Gideon has made 3 books available for us to give away. We'd like to start a conversation about gender-based violence. We'd like more people to stand up and speak like Sara has done. So please, if you are a victim or have been a victim of gender-based violence, drop us a comment below with your email address and let us reach out. The first 3 people to do so will receive a copy of the book as a prize. Thank you. And I'm reluctant to say I hope you'll enjoy, because it's not really an enjoyable story. It's a sad story. But I hope you can relate. Yunus, when was the first time that you met Faisal?
When I was on a business trip to Cape Town, and my daughter, who was in Cape Town running a little business of ours called Gene Junction, and she told me that she met Faisal and she'd like me to meet him. And
That's Rochelle now.
yes.
How old was Rochelle at that?
About 25, 26, around there. Yeah.
Okay. And so she met Faisal and she wanted you to meet him.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we then met that evening for dinner, and having dinner, we just chatted generally what he does, where he worked, and how they met. And she just said that she was in the mall and she met him by chance, and they got talking, and then she met him again, and they started dating. And and he told me that he was working for a company called Melotronic. Then I went into Melotronics to find out whether he did work there, and they said yes, he was the manager.
What did you think of him when you met him the first time?
He seemed polite, very courteous. So, it was like any person probably you meet the first time. Meeting the parents of the girl he likes, he was quite easy, quite nice to talk to. And he knew a lot about computers and IT, which was interesting. So he obviously seemed all right.
And your wife and Mishka, Rochelle's younger sister, when did they meet him for the first time?
They met him about 4 months later, closer to the school holidays in December, just after Christmas. We went down and we met. We were staying at the house we have in Cape Town, and she told her mum and I that she'd like mum to meet Faisal, which the mother did and I did again, and Mishka, and we went out, had supper, and got to know him a bit.
Okay.
Although,
but what was Sarah's impression of Faisal?
Wasn't a good one at all. She just said, "No, something seems to be missing here."
And what was Rochelle's reaction to that?
Quite angry.
Is it?
That how could you judge someone so quickly? He was polite and he was good to you, and how could you judge him? But she said, I just feel that he's not the type of guy that she should be with. And
And Sarah maintained that position.
Yes, virtually, but she was polite, all said and done. She was not rude to him, because I told her that you never know, he might end up being your son-in-law, so you better tread carefully and don't upset her any more than that, and see what happens. But she was right.
Yunus, things are going through my mind. I've got a daughter that's going on to varsity now. What, when you received that call, you were busy watching Wimbledon. I read in Gideon's book.
Yes.
And you received that call. How did that happen, and what goes through a parent's mind? How did you?
It shook me so much that there's the little 9-year-old picks up the phone and says, "There's a man on the line." He says, "Urgent." Guy asked me to phone him back because he doesn't have enough airtime. Gives me his number, which I wrote down on a little notepad I had near the telephone. And then he tells me that there's been an accident and there's been a shooting. And I asked him, is it in the business? Because it's now 8:30. So he says, no, at an apartment. I said, how is that possible? Because the CCTV cameras and the gate, electronic gate. So even if you come in with your car, you can see exactly who's coming in and who's going out. He says, well, there's been an accident. I said, what accident? He says, shooting. And I said, and what happened? He says, well, Rochelle's been shot. I said, how bad is she? And prior to that, my wife and daughter were there my wife's looking at me with virtually tears in her eyes. So I held the call and I told him to go to the bedroom, not to stay there in the room. And I asked him, how is she? And he says, oh, she's dead. And I questioned whether this is a game or somebody thinks it's a funny prank they're playing. And he says, no, it's happened. I said, where's Faisal? He's sitting outside. And later on, when we saw the CCTV footage, he was sitting outside. So he walked out, tried to free himself completely from all.
When you heard about the shooting, and you heard Rochelle was dead, she'd passed on.
Yes.
What did you think actually happened in your mind?
I think the shock of knowing that happened was she was there. Faisal lives there with her. How come he couldn't tell us exactly what was happening? And I wasn't given. I asked the guy. He says the police are here. So I said, "Can I speak to one of them?" He says they don't want to come on the phone. But more than that, then I phoned my brother. His in-laws are all from Cape Town. So I phoned him, and he was here in Maritzburg, and him and my dad lived together. And he phoned his brother-in-law, and they pitched up from there, and that's when I started getting feedback about what really happened.
Yeah.
So it was just, there was nothing coming from his side of the family to say this is what was happening.
Unfathomable, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
When did you tell Sarah and Mishka about what you learned?
Well, after I finished the conversation with this guy, I phoned my brother immediately.
Yes.
I was shaking. And I walked into the room, and she was sitting on the bed. I think, again, she just knew.
Yes.
And she just sat and looked down, and I said to her, Rochelle's gone. We've lost her. So she's been killed, and she just burst out crying.
Oh, that one.
And the little one grabbed her and holding on to her mom, and trying to pacify her mom. I mean, she's only 9 years old.
Yes.
Yeah.
What did you do that night? Did you try and book plane tickets to fly
I
down
did
to Cape Town?
immediately. I tried to book tickets. My sons, I have two sons. My one son came in the room. Both of them were shocked, and I said, book the ticket, and he tried. He couldn't. He's in IT also, so he says couldn't, and he said the only ticket I can get is tomorrow morning 6 o'clock. I said, get it. So my other son says, I'll come with you. So Imran and I both got on the plane, and we went to Cape Town. And we went to the mortuary, and we saw the body, and you could see that she was beaten up before even shot. So to tell me that she committed suicide, I wonder how you break your jaw and have a fractured skull and shoot yourself all in one.
No.
You must be some strong person to take a butt of a gun, which was proven in court that was used to hit her.
Yes.
So
that's horrible.
Yeah.
And did Sarah not go with you down to Cape Town?
No, I didn't want her to come either, because I don't think she would have been able to handle that. Because I was having a hard time handling it. And how would she be, being the mother? And then we then brought the body back, and on the plane, the air hostess came to offer me food, and I was sitting on the window side and tearing. My son was sitting next to me, and she wanted to know what happened. And he said, lost my sister, she's been murdered. And the air hostess virtually tried to give me anything. I said, I just don't want anything. I mean, I'm thinking that here am I sitting in the seat, and below me is a coffin. And my child is in there. Something I don't want anyone to
go through.
Yeah.
Yeah, no parent should go through anything like that.
Then you get to Durban, and then you load it into the hearse, and then you bring it home. That's not right.
Horrible. Yunus, at what stage did you start suspecting in yourself, in your own mind, that it was Faisal who committed the murder?
I wasn't getting anything from him in terms of a phone call or from his family, other than that short, nasty message from the brother who didn't have airtime. There are other brothers and things, but nobody phoned to say, listen, we were there, or we went there, and this is what happened, this is what we saw. There was no communication. The only person who did...
Just silence from that side of
Yeah, but the person who was a caretaker there, he spoke to me that, look, I think this girl's been murdered, and I'm prepared to go to court and give evidence of what I've seen here. And that was it. He was the only guy who was there. And when we went after the burial, a few days later, my son and I went back to retrieve all her stuff and bring it home. The lady in the block is a psychologist. She says to me, this girl didn't do this. It's not possible. She says, I can tell you that. So she says she was very organized, neat type of person. She says, you see all these cars parked here? Hers was the cleanest car. She's not the type.
Yes, yes. But Yunus, now from Rochelle's actual murder and her passing, I mean, there was a journey that you guys had been on, where the state investigated, the police investigated, or supposedly investigated this matter before you even got to the inquest. At at what stage during that process were you as a family told, you know what, we as the police, or we're not really interested and we think it's this, we're going to close the book on this. This has been a suicide, or was it only when it got to the prosecutor that made that decision? When was it that you guys found out that the state is no longer interested in pursuing the matter?
Well, the first instance, when we went there, the police officer had the file, and on the file on the outside, he had written suicide.
He'd written suicide?
Yeah. So when he presented the file to me, he's opening the pages and showing me, wanted me to sign something. I said, excuse me, you got suicide written on the cover. He says, yeah. I said, how was that done? He said, oh, he told us. I said, so Faisal told you it was suicide and you think that's genuine? So he says, well, I have to put something down. So I said, no, I can't sign that document because that's not true.
Yes.
There hasn't been done, any investigation hasn't been done.
Yes.
Then they continued to do whatever investigation they did, and they didn't come up with anything clear in saying that that's what happened. So and then in the inquest, they had luminol test to show that blood was on the refrigerator, on the floor, and even on his clothes. But there was no gun residue on his hand. And I was told that you can wash your hands off with milk and wipe the gun and you won't have anything. So they were trying to get out every possible way. And I think those police officers were, sort of taken care of or bribed or whatever. That they just put what they thought they should.
Yeah. So it's no secret that today we know in hindsight that the prosecutor, the state advocate who was assigned the docket, actually decided not to prosecute, and that was based on that you then obtained a certificate from the Director of Public Prosecutions to do a private prosecution.
Correct.
And in the private prosecution, Sara was the appointed prosecutrix.
Yes.
Your wife.
Yes.
And as the mother.
Yes.
And you then embarked on this long process.
Yes.
To seek justice that you were denied.
Yes.
Tell me about that journey.
Well, for starters, when we were given the certificate to pursue with a private prosecution, the police officer was Inspector LaRue, who was decorated by Nelson Mandela for his bravery. And I was told to come to Cape Town by him because he wanted to chat to me about the case. But he spent about 3 hours checking out if I was involved in this thing. He was very, I thought he was very good. He wanted to clear the part where there's no ways that in any way I had probably...
He wanted to eliminate you as a suspect?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he asked me questions. How often did you see her? How often did you phone her? When did you talk to her last? And we were close. Did you ever had an argument? Did you ever physically hit her? And I said, no, none of it. And he said, I'm sorry I had to do this because I have to, pave the way to see where this is.
Yes.
And he spent quite a bit of time, almost, I think, 3 hours, checking, and he wrote everything down copiously. And that's where it was. And
But
then
did he not do the same with Faisal?
he actually then went to Faisal's place, and I was then still in Cape Town. He went to Faisal's place, and Faisal was apparently pretending like, don't do it, don't do it. He was acting at his apartment that he was, that she did it, and he was telling her not to do it. And obviously this guy is a top-notch guy, so he came down. He was with another police officer. He came down, he told me himself, he came down and sat in the car, and they waited. And within 10 minutes of leaving his place, Faisal came down and met his friends and was doing a high five. It was quite okay.
That was astonishing.
It was nothing that pretense of being emotionally, upset or whatever wasn't true. Then they had a certificate search warrant, and they searched and they found the watch with blood, and they found some clothing items with blood.
Yes.
So that was again all in the inquest. None of that was brought up.
Yeah.
None of that was checked.
Did you ever speak to Faisal after Rochelle was killed? You personally?
No,
Never.
I didn't speak to
And
him.
Sara never spoke
No.
to him as well.
No. He used to come to court with a big smile on his face, especially Advocate Tennyson. She was
She was the state advocate.
yeah. She would talk to him more than me. So she was like, I don't understand this, that he'd come to court and she'd go into her office and he'd walk into her office. I thought to myself, it's a bit odd.
Yeah.
And I'm the one who should be, you'd speak to, but no, he was.
Okay. Well, we know today that there's quite a scathing judgment against the state and the way that the state handled this whole affair, and the fact that the state just simply, pushed it under the rug. They just wiped it, swept it under the rug, and that's what then eventually, led to you guys continuing with this private prosecution and going through with it. It's unforgivable what the state did, and it's a matter that should have been handled by the state. But the question I've got to you is, what does a parent do when they're not a Yunus Asmall that's got, a strong businessman that's got, businesses right throughout the KwaZulu-Natal region? You've got an established brand. And what does a person do when they're a parent and they don't have that financial backing to actually pursue a private prosecution like you guys?
So true. It's sad that it should go to that level, because I can tell you there are people walking around who've lost their children and in a similar manner and can't do anything about it because there won't be any prosecution.
The state just
doesn't
washes their hands.
Yeah,
and says,
I've got a staff member of mine who lost her son in a murder because of girlfriend issues, and she's got no way she's going to get there. Even she's been to the police station to report the matter. They just said, well, these things happen all the time.
Yeah.
Nothing we can do about it.
Nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
It's like it's just too easy for the state just to throw up their hands and say
we don't.
Oh no, it's self-defense or some other reason, and they just.
I also think in our case there was a bit of the biasness was that Gideon, Cobus, and Reggie Perma, where they, I think they had some past dealings with Tennyson where she didn't get what she wanted, and she was quite angry when she saw them. Yes. Oh, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
That was her. I was standing there wondering what's wrong with this woman. She says, we have our own people. And Reggie Perma, for starters, is a pathologist.
Yes.
And
very well known, famous pathologist.
Yeah, and the state pathologist, her information didn't turn out to be what Reggie had pointed out,
Yes.
and she accepted that she was wrong.
Yes.
So that didn't make Tennyson happy at all.
So the ego of the state advocate Tennyson actually came in the way of her objectively looking
Yeah.
at the facts.
Yeah.
And giving Rochelle the justice that she
Correct.
deserved.
Correct.
That's sad.
It is, yeah.
Today, Yunus, you are quite a big proponent of gender-based, or proponent against gender-based violence
Yes.
and so on, because of what happened in your personal experience.
Correct.
Tell us a bit about that, and where's that taken your trajectory of your life?
No, I worry. I see things that this happen, and it just shocks me that how people can get away with it. And you become a bit more protective of your children. You worry about these things, and and you don't know where this is gonna go. How long can they go? There is no security in terms of police force listening to you. For a lot of people, and if you meet people in the community, and you hear some of the things that happen. I mean, I can give you an example. My daughter at the hospital.
Mishka now.
Yeah,
She became a doctor.
yes,
Because she was how old was
9
she
years
when
old.
she was 9 years old then,
Yeah,
and she's a doctor now.
no,
Today.
yeah. She was at Edendale Hospital, and she said that even a child came in, 5-year-old child raped.
What?
Yeah, and she said she came home and she broke down and she cried and she said, "I'll quit this profession." And we had to talk to her that, look, these are things in life that happen. And she said, but the thing is, this child was raped by the mother's boyfriend.
Yeah.
And when the child sort of spoke up, the mother smacked the child.
No.
And then the nurse reacted and told the mother that I'm going to make sure you get charged for this.
That is horrible.
Yeah. But this happens on a daily basis.
And today you are not only financially supporting the movement against gender-based violence,
Yeah.
you're also actively involved in the movement.
I try to be. I'm not, but I've got good people with me that I get involved with them. At my work, I've got an attorney working for me. She's involved in a lot of community work and homeless stuff. So that's where my involvement is, to see whether we can
Make a difference.
Yeah.
You know, as a family, we're going back. We're talking about Rochelle's murder happened in 2005.
Yes.
Only last year, 2023, you finally got the cost award after the conviction, after
Yes.
appeal.
Yes.
That Gideon wrote about in the book.
Yes.
There was an application then for the state
Cost.
to pay back your costs, because you had literally done the state's work at your cost and inconvenience.
Yes.
For all these years, and you were awarded a punitive cost order in your favor.
Yes.
On an attorney and own client base, but that was only finalized last year.
Yes.
Nothing has come. You still haven't got the money.
Nothing.
But forgetting about the financial aspect of it now, what did that conviction and going through the appeal, what did that mean to you as a family to know that you finally closed the book on Rochelle's murderer?
Yeah, we felt all along that once we, on the final day, just to add one other thing, when the court said he was guilty and sentence will be passed, he was taken down 15 years.
Yes.
And he was taken down to the gallows. He passed us and he said, "I'm not finished yet."
He said to you, "I'm not finished yet." He didn't say sorry.
Nothing. So his advocate came to talk to me. He says, "Well, are you happy? Things have gone out." And I just said to him, "You can't be happy, because the person is not here anymore."
No, there's
no
winners here.
I said, "But at least I know now that what's happened was his doing."
Yes.
And that was the thing that, if anything, that's a satisfaction that we know how it happened. There's some closure.
Yeah. there must have been great anticipation on your side for the judgment in the appeal case. When the appeal verdict eventually came out and the appeal was refused, how did you feel about that?
It took about 3 months to give you
the judgment.
yeah, which was the scary part, because now you're thinking every day,
what's going to happen?
Yeah.
What's the verdict going to be?
Yeah.
And how did you and Sarah feel eventually when you got the verdict and
Oh,
you found out that
we
he
were
was?
now we're more than happy that
Yeah.
because two courts have now quite clearly said that you're not you are the murderer,
Yeah.
and you're not going to get away with it.
It doesn't bring Rochelle back,
No.
but at least you got that closure.
Yes.
Do you and Sarah feel now that you've got that closure that you can start a new chapter in your life? I mean, there can hardly ever be when you've lost a child as a parent. I don't think that can ever heal properly.
No.
But do you think there's a way forward, a new chapter in your life that you can move on with?
Yeah, you move on, but it never, as you say, you never ever forget, or you never ever, when you're celebrating the birthday or the others, or when you're having Eid, when we do have Eid celebration, it's not something that, I mean, you forget. You don't forget it. You remember it.
Yes.
You think, hey, she would have been here. It would have been nice. And, her little sister, then of 9 years old, would have been so happy that my sister is here, because when Mishka was born, she doted on her little sister. And even when I went to fetch her body, I opened the car boot and there were two presents there, one for her sister, one for her mother. She was coming home for a holiday. And, you all those things. And I brought the presents, and she even bought me one. And she bought me a pair of moccasins. I still got them and I don't wear them, but it's in my cupboard. It's brand new. And you think about all these things that, this is something. And I've got grandkids now, and they'll ask you questions about her, and they'll ask you how she was, and they'll see the photograph, and they say things to you. I said, if she were here, you'd be spoiled rotten.
Is that Mishka's kids now?
No,
Your
my son's kids. Yeah,
son's kids.
yeah.
You probably can't help but think, if Rochelle was still alive, you would have had grandchildren from her maybe now.
Possible. Yeah.
And that must hurt.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It's all of my extended family, all of them feel it. I mean, my dad, when her body came back, he was beside himself. And that's why when Gideon told me about the private prosecution, and he says, we can go that route. If you want to, you got to give me an answer. Can you let me know? I'll give you some time. I said, no, I'll let you know sooner than, I think, the next morning. I phoned him up. I spoke to my dad. My dad said, go for it. He says, I'll back you up on it. I'll share the expense with you. So he was hell-bent on saying, no, get the truth. Even my brother. Both have passed on now, but, yeah.
Yunus, last question. This whole ordeal had taken a toll on your health as well. You were diagnosed with cancer.
Correct.
Then you're on remission again. You got cancer the second time.
The first time around, I was, funny enough, just before I had it, I was in India on business, and I wasn't feeling too good. And I went to my agent there. I told him that I think I need to see a doctor. I don't feel well. I've traveled so far. He says, would you mind seeing a homeopath? I said, I prefer it. I'll go. He says, only thing, this homeopath is a cardiologist. And he doesn't practice cardiology anymore. He's done about 1,000 cardiology procedures. So I met the gentleman, and he sat and asked me, have you got family problems? And I said, no, not really. Business problem? I said, no. He says, you've lost anyone? I said, yes, my eldest daughter. He says, well, if you don't resolve that, emotionally, you'll end up with cancer. And that can happen within a few months. But I'm giving you this kind of medication, herbal medicine. I want you to take it and try and meditate and see if you can, control your emotions. How do you do that?
How do you do that? How do you do that?
And then 6 months later, I found a lump growing here on my neck. And my throat was sore. And I asked the doctors I was with, and Dr. Dara, he's a urologist, but he would know anyway. He said to me, I'll set you up with an ENT. Maybe it's flu or whatever. The ENT gave me medication. The lump grew bigger. Didn't come down. Then they biopsied it. And I was told that it's cancer. Oh, well.
And today, are you clear?
I am clear, thank God. And then I went through the chemo, and about the third chemo I had, I wasn't well at all again. Dr. Dada, A.K. Dada, lived down the road from me, came because he told my wife, anytime you need help, call me. So he came and checked me out, and he took me to the hospital in his car and admitted me, and I ended up in a coma. I picked up septicemia.
No.
And then I was put into this isolated glass box in the theatre. I woke up after 10 days.
That's horrible.
Not knowing whatever happened to me. I hadn't even known that I was there till 10 days until my wife told me.
If there's one message, Yunus, today that you would give to Rochelle if she was still alive, what would that be?
It's a difficult one to say. I've got a daughter now who's 28 years old, and she's obviously going to get married hopefully someday. How do you tell her how to choose who you don't know what's out there anymore. No. You don't know what to expect. And if Rochelle were around, I would have probably said, I don't know, maybe I think mom's telling you things that maybe you need to watch. But even when after her death, I went to the shop and they had two girls working there, and the girl said he used to come around brandishing a gun and threatening and shouting and screaming, which she never told you. So I know I say that thing, they say love is blind. But here's a classic case. And then the one girl said, she used to see a doctor. I said, for? He says, when he beat her up. He never told us.
She never told you?
No. So I found the doctor's name. I went to his rooms. He pulled out a file and he showed me a chair has been broken on the back. And this has been done. That been done. We were totally out of it. So all I can say is if anybody has children, they must keep their communication open, because this girl never mentioned it. And he was even prepared, which he did, to come to court and give evidence. And he came to court and gave evidence that this is what he had. So she wasn't telling us the truth that, he beat me up, because she loved him so much. So she just didn't tell us the truth.
That is so sad.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So that really shocked us. And then now you go to court and the guy sits there with that arrogance and says, well, she shot herself. I didn't do anything. Yeah,
all her fault.
Yeah.
Although the evidence pointed out he had shoved that gun into her mouth with force.
That's right. And you get a top ballistic expert who even showed the court how it happened and asked the court, that told the court, if you shot through the mouth, you can't have your head cracked, and nor can you have your jaw cracked. I just feel at the end of it, parents should keep their contact as close as possible and realize, and if they hear anything, doesn't sound right, you need to confront it immediately. Because if you don't get that information, you don't know any better. And I think if you want to be close to your children and know their progress in life, that's part of what you got to look for. Because these days, I think when we were younger, things went the way they are with social media and with the things around you. Scary what information goes through.